today I will talk about what is called superhydrophobic surfaces called drag reduction, the frictional drag reduction. And this topic has been very hot for the last 10 years maybe, but there's a lot of doubts about whether it's going to ever be a reality or not, and I'll talk about why, where's the problem, and how do we solve it. First, let me, for those who don't know me, this is what I do research for. I do MEMS. So my research area is to make things very small in micro scale, structures, something to do with nano imprint, the last call. But this is the way I am. However, the application I am currently focusing on have application area which is in meters and 10 meters, sometimes 100 meter size. So there's a huge difference between where I play for my expertise and where I want my expertise to apply to. That actually connection is maybe from here. So these MEMS is in micro scale. And in micro scale or sub-millimeter scale, there's a very unique property in nature that surface tension of the liquid actually plays a big role, unlike our own globe. So that is the scale I'm interested in terms of nature or science. And that one has some big application in reducing the friction for water or liquid flow. So first let's talk about friction itself in a big picture. So friction we know between solid and solid, we have dry friction against the motion. So usually what we do is we put some kind of liquid to lubricate to reduce the friction. This is probably the fundamental for today's or modern mechanical, especially engineering. Well, no. What about, however, a solid is moving on the liquid? Can we use a gas to lubricate? That is fundamental point of our approach, and the answer is yes. The problem is how do we put gas in there? That is more important. Unlike the friction between solid and solid, which is really friction, for when there is a solid moving against a liquid, we usually call it drag because it's more than friction. So when a boat moves in open water or the liquid flows into a pipe, we usually call it drag. Our interest is, of course, all related, but right now our main first interest of application is for a boat. When the boat moves in the water, there's typically three sources of drag. One is the actual friction that we were talking about, friction on the surface. Second is what's called foam drag, because a large object is going through a liquid surface. There is a pressure, stagnant pressure you have to overcome. That is called the foam drag. Also, you are creating wave, and some energy should be spent to create energy that is better wave resistance. What we are talking, I'm going to talk about today for drag reduction, cannot do anything about these two kinds of drags. But I'm trying to reduce the friction on a frictional, skin frictional drag. That's what I'm trying to reduce. So my interest is in reducing the skin friction on the drag. So first is, well, which have the biggest contribution to the overall drag? Well, the answer is it depends, but mostly it's actually skin frictional drag. For the motivation of why skin friction drag is important, it's good to look at overall picture of the energy consumption. So according to some source, the skin frictional drag among the three drag components, most of the typical cargo ship, 60 to 70% of the drag is coming from skin friction. If it's an oil tanker, large oil tanker going relatively slow, then it's even more. If it's under the water, there's no wave creation, so even more. So typically, large boats going slower will have more skin friction contribution, meaning our approach will have more impact. So again, if it's oil tanker example, actually majority of drag is coming from skin friction drag. So yes, if you can reduce the drag, skin friction, it actually can reduce overall drag quite a bit. How much energy is consumed, especially for marine transportation alone? overall global oil supply, huge amount of oil consumption. More than 8% of them are just for marine transportation. So if we can reduce the energy consumption for marine transportation, it alone not only can have a huge economic impact, but even for environmental, a huge impact. This is one of the big cargo ship. Not only that, in terms of environmental issue, again, for entire global CO2 emission, marine transportation alone constitutes to pretty big, significant part of the overall global CO2 emission. So as you can see, it's pretty big. Not only that, especially when you look at not just CO2 but carcinogenic, health hazard gas, those are especially bad for cargo ships because they use typically very low-grade petroleum, which eject a lot of health hazard gas. As one example, for large boat, typically 200-meter size cargo ship, the cancer estima are causing pollutant, that typical sulfuric gases. One boat is equivalent to 50 million cars. That's how bad they are. So as you can see, reducing some of the gas consumption has huge impact. Okay, so I hope you understand the impact of potentially successful drag reduction to not only the economy but the human environmental health. Okay, so now let's get into the technical issue. So as I said earlier, yes, conceptually it's possible, of course, to reduce the drag or provide lubrication using air against between the water and the object. So for example, these are existing for quite many years. This is an example of torpedo. This is what's called the supercavitation. If you enclose the entire object in the water with the gas, obviously gas will propel very fast because gas around the object will give you very low viscosity environment. So unlike water, it can go actually many times the speed of typical in-water torpedo. Also, even if it has a boat, if you provide a lot of air gases or any gas, bubble, that also can reduce the friction, skin friction. So yes, that has been around for many years. It's pretty obvious. It's not that difficult to understand why it reduces drag. The problem is, most of the energy, you end up consuming more energy to create this gas than you save. Because this gas won't stay in this supercavitation case. As soon as the object passes by, these all break into bubbles and disappear. It will either condense in this case, or they leave as bubbles. So at the end of the day, you don't really gain any energy. You actually lose more energy. Just scientifically interesting, and in torpedo's case, you don't really care about energy consumption. So that has been for around a decade. So about a decade and a half ago, early 2000, when super hydrophobic surface became popular in science, people started thinking, including myself, well, can we use these gases which are trapped on the surface between liquid and surface? Can we use this gas to lubricate and provide the slippery effect? So obviously the question is, well, conceptually yes, it will reduce some drag, but is it large enough? If it's only 0.1%, the drag reduction is interesting scientifically, but it doesn't have much impact engineering. So can we do it? Second is, well, the assumption was the superhydrophobic surface case, compared with these cases, the gas will remain there. You don't have to provide the gas all the time. But how can, yes, for a few minutes it will stay, but how long will it stay? Can it stay for days? Can it stay for months? So that's another question. And lastly, well, is it really going to be cheap enough? Today I will talk about these two scientific issues, that whether superhydrophobic surface can provide drag reduction that is large enough to be significant, with the engineering significance. Second is it possible to keep this gas for a long time, at least days, hopefully at least a few weeks, and hopefully for months. Practical in the current issue is maybe something I won't talk about today, because usually when scientifically something is proven, engineers come up with a way to manufacture something cheap. So first, for those who are not that familiar ongoing definition is on superhydrophobic surface, water will form contact angle greater than 150, which is not natural. For smooth surfaces, Teflon is probably one of the most water-repelling surfaces, give you about 100, contact angle of 120. So 100 contact angle bigger than 120 is not natural. You can only get this to superhydrophobic surfaces. And superhydrophobic surface typically is hydrophobic material rough. So these are very rough, microscopically rough surfaces, which is hydrophobic material. In that case, yes, you can get very large surface contact angle, and water will form droplets and roll away. Okay, sounds like this surface hates water, so it should repel water, and it probably should reduce the friction. That is understandable but very common misunderstanding. So this is what I'm trying to say here. It's widely spread misunderstanding is the air trapped on superhydrophobic surface, giving you this impression of very water repelling surfaces will make water repel and its droplets roll off, so surface should also reduce drag of water flow. That's understandable again, expectation, but it's not true. If you remember the fluid mechanics 101, what you learn is whatever the material, whatever the surface, solid surfaces, whether it's a glass surface or Teflon surface, there is no slip condition. Fluid, any flow, liquid or flowing on solid surface should have velocity of 0 of the surface. Doesn't matter whether hydrophobic. So if you follow that principle, actually this is wrong. But again, it's very widespread misunderstanding, even in scientific community. Also, the water droplets rolling on a surface, like this video here, is not the same. It's different from water, drop of the water, slipping by on a surface which is submerged. It's actually very different. That's another big misconception you commonly find in literature. Okay, anyway, so based on this, what I can tell you is today, what we know for sure is if you get these two, we go pretty soon, then you will get drag reduction. So to obtain drag reduction or engineering utility, both in open water, superhydrophobic surface should be able to reduce the frictional drag of water flow by a useful amount, which have meaning engineering, not just scientifically, scientific meaning, but engineering meaning. That means at least maybe 10% of friction. Then we can really talk about some engineering or engineering points. For large flow system, I'm going to pretty soon what I mean by large flow system. This reduction has been actually shown for micro systems and MEM systems, but has not been shown for large systems, and there's a reason for that. So number one requirement, if somebody can make a surface which have slip large enough for large surface, that's great. And since we already assume that there is an air on the surface under the water, if the air there persists during the surface under the water for a long time, yes. If both of them are true, then yes, we will get drag reduction in practical conditions. The first is, so we'll talk about, so I'll divide my talk into these two to answer whether this is possible and this is possible and both are possible. So first is, can we get drag reduction large enough to be meaningful? So first, before I go to drag reduction, I talk about actually what's called slip length. So that's a scientific definition of how slippery a solid surface is against flow. In this case, water flowing. So that is basically the characteristics of some surface. So slip length, not the drag reduction, is to be describe how slippery a surface is. Because drag is not only the function of how slippery your surface is, but also what kind of flow system you are. So if you look at this graph, if you flow a liquid inside a channel pipe, and channel diameter may be, in this case, micrometers, so it's 1 millimeter here, smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's what's called the slip length. If slip length is large slip length, of course, means it's more slippery. If slip length happens to be 0.1 millimeter, that's this green line, then you can reduce the drag of the pipe flow by about maybe 10%. If the channel diameter is 1 millimeter. If the channel, however, if channel diameter is 0.1 millimeter up, using the same surface, you'll get about 40% of it. So as you can see, even if you use the same superhydrophobic surface, depending on what kind of flow system you create, you can get large drag reduction, small drag reduction. So that's why drag reduction is a very misleading property. So second thing, as I just said 1 millimeter. But I like to apply this technology to bolt, which is 10 millimeter, meaning even if you have a very good slip length surface, your drag reduction becomes very, very small as your system becomes large and large. So it sounds like there's no hope to apply this technology to bolt, which is 10 meters scale, 100 meter scale. Sometimes science, nature helps us to jump a little bit. There's another nature that comes into the picture, so that yes, even if your bolt is 100 meter, the key event happens within a millimeter, right on the surface. That makes us possible. That makes it possible to create a drag reduction for 100 meter bolt, even if what is happening is only 1 millimeter above the surface of the hull. Okay, so I hope I was able to show you slip length is the key, not drag reduction in terms of scientific science. Okay, sir. Now, so we know that you need superhydrophobic surface which have large slip length, not drag reduction yet. To jump to the conclusion first, to have macro scale flow effect for bolt, even for 100 meter size bolt, boundary layer right on the hull surface within a millimeter thickness is where everything happens. To have the effect of drag reduction or friction drag reduction in that 1 millimeter thickness, we need slip length about 1/10 of it to have any engineering components. So what we are searching for is slip length as close as possible to 100 micrometers. Okay, so first, to design this kind of superhydrophobic surface like impact, at the beginning there was not even any theory, scientific background, what kind of surface will give you this kind of slip. That had to be developed. So superhydrophobic surface drag reduction had been talked about in 1999, 2000, 2001. Even today, there is no success, and there is a reason for it, because there has been no science to start with. So early experimental study did not, without having this knowledge, did not provide any conclusive information. There have been hundreds of publications, which is scientifically interesting, important, but not much useful for engineering purposes. So I will give you now a background, the story of how we now know the science part. So let's first consider laminar flow. Don't worry about the details. In laminar flow, when things are predictable mathematically, there have been some theories, and our lab was using the MEMS technology. We were able to create surfaces which is precise enough to create certain microscopic geometry to confirm what kind of theory was correct. So it took another maybe 5-6 years, but eventually we figured it out. And now that theory is proven, at least for laminar flow. We had a fun to put all the theories public in the literature back into the picture and found things very interesting. So these lines are what now proven as scientific predictions. So these are for grading structures, these are for post structures, and these are for randomly rough structures. And this is slip length, non-dimensional, and this is gas friction. Gas friction is basically how thin solid structure is. So large gas friction means when the water is on top, water touches more air than solid. So large gas friction means water touches more air than solid. As you can imagine, gas friction becomes higher and higher, you get more slipping. It's low gravity. So as you can imagine, when experiment goes well, you will approach theoretical prediction. Usually experiments do not go well, so you are supposed to have less than theoretical possibility, right? So these are at least correct. It's not totally getting the experimental or theoretical expectation, but experiment at least right. So looking back, these data, experimental proven, obviously was wrong. It was theoretically not even possible. And I had to use log graph because, especially early data, was provided experimental data which was 1, 2, 3 orders of magnitude higher than even possible in theory. So that's how you can see. So my conclusion from here is these unreasonable data in early years without knowing the scientific facts actually made follow-up experiment or study very, very difficult because the expectation is way above and even theoretically possible. The worst is actually for random surfaces. As you can see, this is a theoretical possible. And as you can see, most of the published data are orders of magnitude higher than even theoretically possible. Why did it even happen? Okay, so first of all, the slip on superhydraulic surface and drag reduction in laminar flows are at least understood today. So now there is not much argument whether something is true or not. So using that theory that we know, we decide to go to these grading structures, trench structures, not random structures. Not only that, we know exactly how to get that kind of slip length that has meaning for real world. So these are requirements. But so far, I said everything is in laminar because it's not predicted, scientifically studied. You can study it. But how about turbulent flow? Well, even for turbulence, even for those who study the turbulence of their life for less than 10 years, they still don't know what's really going on. It's very, very difficult. But unfortunately, that's where most of the boat traveling in open water, we have open water with turbulent flows. So, since there is no theory even possible, we have to do some experiment. Now, using the MEMS technology to be made our samples, this is the only very small sample, but the key is we create two plates which is suspended by beam springs using MEMS. So they are pretty much exactly the same spring constant on the surface, but one surface has these structures, the other surface is smooth, bottom up Teflon roll. The only difference between two plates are one is structured and one is smooth. And we did test this one in our water channel, shown here, and we measure how much. Okay. So by measuring, optically measuring the difference between two plates, displacement, we can measure what is the drag reduction. So if you look at this video, smooth surface shifts more than superhydraulic surface. And this is the first direct verification that you can get drag reduction in turbulent flow, turbulent open water flow. And even the result even amazed ourselves that in certain conditions, of course, large gas fraction, we were able to remove as much as 75% of the drag. No, only 25% left. It sounds great. So we are now increasing the Reynolds number more and more to obtain more realistic results. Well, sounds like a dream is coming true. It's not that fast because there are actually there's a timing I want to interrupt a little bit. However, these are all in water channel experiment. So water channel experiment, we had huge drag reduction. Other people also had drag reduction, even using these rough surfaces. Even those, the many successful drag reduction in flow water channels have never been transpired to success in open water. And people wonder why. So the problem has been consistently lab success but failed in field demo. And we think, I believe, the main reason is, especially for rough surfaces, in water channel, the way water channel works is actually water channel is always saturated or super saturated with the air. There's always air coming from the liquid or water into the gas. But in reality, in open water, that water in open water is undersaturated with the air. So in open air, in field conditions, this water will take the gas away from the surface. That's, I believe, why people had so much success in that water channel and never had success in water. Not only that, going back to the theory, even today, all the drag reduction people report in water channel, that reduction is much, much higher than theoretically possible. So that indicates that something is wrong. So the second question is, well, will the air layer persist? Because our motivation was that air layer will persist in superhydrophobic surface. The main difference between regular superhydrophobic surface with the droplet is under the water drop, there is an air around, always providing the air into under the water. But when it's submerged, this gas, once it's gone, it's completely gone. So it's much more difficult. Not only that, even theoretically, we have proven that even water, or maybe 10 centimeters deep or deeper than 10 centimeters from the water surface, the gas of these surfaces will not even stay. Even theoretically not possible. So it kind of explains why it will not even possible to do any interaction. I'm going to jump. This is kind of more sophisticated result. But the key is, even the nature does not allow the air to stay on the surface when you submerge under the water. So it's, in a way, we're trying to combat, which is no chance of winning. So with the nature, when we know that nature does not allow the gas to stay, the only way is to find the solution with the engineering techniques. So this is our technique. So now we accept under the water, after a while, this gas levels called plastron will be gone. We accept it. Instead, we apply voltage between your whole surface and conducting water. Now, if the water went to any of the structure and touched the conducting hull, but if electrolysis happen, gas will be generated. They will push the water away, return to the original temperature. This will go back around without having any sensing mechanism or control mechanism. It's self-control. So yes, you use a little bit of energy, but very small amount of energy, but you create large drag reduction. I'm actually going to jump a little bit to show that, however, yes, the conceptually things are always easy. Usually implementation is much more difficult. Even for same structure, unless you do things right, yes, gas will be generated, but in this case, gas will be lost. Instead of spreading on the surface, gas will form as bubbles and leak. So it's not successful. But even if you look pretty similar, if you do design things properly, scientifically, right, then as you can see, the gas is generated by electrolysis, but self-controlled electrolysis and spread only sideways. So this way, we can recover the plastron on the surface without keep losing the energy. So this is our strategy to combat the nature that is against us. So this is just one of the last videos showing, well, so far we're showing yes, the gas is spreading on the top, but how do you know it actually recovers well the way we present a real plant? So this is a view from the side. So this is the water and this is the air, the one trench looking from the side using transparent material. As you can see, there's air. As I warm, air diffuses away to the water, and when the water touches the underneath, as you can see, it's real time. Sorry, it's 30 times fast, but hydrogen is generated and recover to the exact position so that you don't have to continue to consume the energy. So the conclusion of number 2 is yes, nature does not allow you to keep the air, but engineering can solve the problem using the semi-active surface, what we call semi-active surface, that uses a minimum amount of energy in a self-regulated manner. One can maintain the plastron under realistic conditions. So overall, by combining condition number 1, which has been proven now, and number 2, which has been proven in concept, but have more work to implement in real conditions, our effort currently is focusing on making drag reduction films, flexible films, through a mass manufacturing method. And this one shows our success, showing that this is actually a flexible, thin Teflon film, which is one wire, and showing that when it's wet, it automatically recovers the superhydrophilic state by generating the gas by itself without having any control. Okay, so overall, this is my philosophy. If you play the game right way, using the scientific knowledge properly, and we can apply even microscale phenomena to large particles.